What is up, everybody? I'm Bo from Brutal Commentary, and today I'll be breaking down our next matchup for UFC Fight Night Sacramento. In this matchup, we have Anthony Wint taking on Terrence Chapman. Now, this fight was put together on relatively short notice, about a week's notice, I should say. In fact, by the time this fight got announced, Anthony Wint had just fought on the first week of this year's season of Dana White's Contender Series, absolutely annihilated Matt Adams to win the contract. And I believe, he took zero damage in that fight. I mean, he won in like less than a minute. And it was Dana White who said, stay in Las Vegas. We're going to try and book you a fight. And they were able to get Adam Wint a fight this week for the UFC Sacramento card. Now, taking him on is the relatively unknown fighter in Terrence Chapman, who's got some decent wins over in Fury FC, but this is obviously a massive step up in competition. I don't want to call Chapman a lamb led to slaughter because, he's got some power. It's heavyweight. You always got to be careful of that. But, he's taking on Anthony Wint, who is a real prospect in the heavyweight division. 7-0 as a pro, all but one by finish. That looks like an absolute specimen and someone who could probably go far in this heavyweight division with the right amount of time and experience. Taking on Chapman, who's 5-1 as a pro. Neither guy has cracked double-digit fights, but both of them could maybe do something in the heavyweight. But really, this fight really comes down to one thing. How good is Anthony Wint? We're going to find out. So, with all that said, let's get down to the breakdown. Now, starting with Anthony Wint, I gotta be honest, when I heard Anthony Wint's story and journey to get into MMA, it reminded me a lot of Josh Hockett in some ways, right? Both guys have wrestling backgrounds, both started off their athletic careers in the NFL before transitioning into combat sports, and both of them are relatively young for heavyweight, right? Josh Hockett's still in his 20s, and in the case of Anthony Wint, he's 30 years old. So in heavyweight years, that's relatively young. Now, for Anthony Wint, he does not have your typical heavyweight build. He is not a blob in any way, shape, or form. He is truly an athletic specimen. And similar to Josh Hockett, Anthony Wint doesn't actually weigh that much. By the time he fought Matt Adams, when he weighed in for that fight, he weighed about 234 pounds. So it's not like Wint is carrying a ton of unnecessary weight. He's a very athletic heavyweight. And you look at the dude, he looks like the fucking Hulk. Plain and simple. It's kind of like if Ateba Gautier, decided to move up to heavyweight. That's what he looks like. Now, the NFL background gives Wint a really nice physicality and aggression to his game. He's comfortable charging forward, getting physical with his opponents, and imposing his will on them. But he's not just some giant athlete who decided to start fighting. There's actually a pretty solid wrestling foundation underneath it as well. His offensive takedown games are good. His takedown defense is good. And once Anthony Wint gets on top, that ground and pound is nasty. And of course, the physical strength. The dude is so fucking strong. It's kind of ridiculous. Just seeing his Contender Series fight, you saw the strength there, right? Matt Adams, he went for a takedown, went for a double leg, got a tight waist, and tried to reap the leg. What did Anthony Wint do? He just simply leaned forward as his leg was getting off the ground and put his weight on Matt Adams, which forced Matt Adams to his back. That's just a different level of strength right there against a guy who was realistically probably weighed a little more than Anthony. And I think that strength is going to be a huge weapon for Wint moving forward in his career. For the foreseeable future, at least until he starts fighting other athletic heavyweights in this division, so roughly like the top 10, I imagine Anthony Wint is going to be physically stronger than just about everybody else he fights. Just about. And that's despite the fact that he may actually be the lighter man in some of these matchups, right? Let's say he fought Curtis Blades. He might be stronger than Blades. And Blades is a big guy. So that's just something I think for the foreseeable future. But in terms of this matchup right now, I definitely think he's going to be stronger than Terrence Chapman. Now, in terms of the striking for Wint, it's developing. I wouldn't call him, a technical kickboxer, not at this stage yet. It's much more fundamental. He's got some good straight punches. He's aggressive, carries a ton of power. But obviously, there's still plenty of room for him to develop his game. And that's perfectly fine. He's currently at Kill Cliff FC, a great gym. With great sparring partners and coaches, like Henry Hoof is there. He's relatively new to MMA, and he's already got the physical tools and wrestling foundation in that, to the point where if the striking starts to develop even better than it already is, then that's when things really could get interesting. Now, the only big question left for Anthony Wint is adversity, right? He's 7-0 with 5 knockouts and 1 submission. And most of those fights haven't given us a reason to question him, right? At least how does he look under adversity? He's been to a decision 1 time, and that was relatively early in his career. I mean, you look at it, the fight with Omar El Salon, that was his 3rd professional fight, and that was back in 2025. So we at least know Anthony Wint can go the distance. We just don't know how it looks continuously because every other fight was been a finish. But for now, when it comes to Anthony Wint as a prospect, I think he's the goods. Now, looking at Terrence Chapman, now there's this is where things get a little more difficult because there really isn't much footage on the dude. In fact, you look at it, Tapology and SureDogs don't even have the dude's age. So it's like, who knows? He might be 20, he might be 30. I have no clue. But one thing I know about Chapman is that he's a big heavyweight. He's got legitimate power in his hands. I've seen enough of him to know that he's not necessarily completely out of his depth. In this fight, maybe. But in general, against some of the other like blobs at heavyweight, I don't think he's out of his depth yet. Now, one thing that's going to stand out about Chapman is his power. In one of his Fury FC's fights, he landed a counter right that absolutely holded his opponent in like the opening minutes. It wasn't something like accumulation of damage or referee stoppage. He just caught the guy clean and put him out. And obviously, that's the kind of power you have to respect at heavyweight. Now, for being a blob, I'm going to call it as it is. Chapman is a bit of a blob. He's got some decent movement for a guy his size. He's not exactly floating around the cage, but he can move reasonably well. He does do a decent job of pressing his opponents forward towards the fence. One thing of interest is they both actually share a common opponent. Both of them fought Umar El Salon, and where Wint decisioned that guy, Chapman knocked him out. So just a fun little bit of MMA math here. I don't think it's super relevant to this fight, but I thought I'd bring it up. Overall, for Chapman, he's got some, like I said, he has some tools. He's got some big power, and he can move a bit for a guy his size. But other than that, there's not really much to go on here. Now, breaking it down stylistically, it's pretty straightforward, if I'm being fair here. All the credit in the world to Terrence Chapman for taking this fight on about a week's notice, and he deserves respect here. He's got real power, and Anthony Wint cannot afford to just walk forward and put with his hands down and assume that he's going to be fine, because Chapman does have power, and if Anthony Wint is not careful, he could get knocked out in this fight. It's heavyweight at MMA after all. But when I look at this fight, I just do not really see Chapman win this fight whatsoever. Anthony Wint is the more physical fighter in there. He's faster, more explosive, and I think he's considerably stronger on top for sure. He's got the wrestling to where if the striking ain't going his way, he can easily go for a double or single leg, get Chapman down, and I do not think Chapman's getting up, to be honest with you. I just don't think a guy as strong, fast, and as with the wrestling background at Anthony Wint, I just don't see Chapman getting up from this. So I really think it's a pretty straightforward matchup up here, where ultimately, while Chapman's got power that Wint has to respect, that's about it. So for my official prediction, I'm going to go with Anthony Wint here, and I'm picking him via knockout. Not super shocking, right? Like I said, it's heavyweight MMA. Crazy things have happened, and I could see a world where Anthony Wint lands a right hand and hurts or even knocks out. Chapman lands the right hand and hurts or even knocks out Anthony Wint. But, that's a 1 in a million shot. I don't think he's going to land it. I think Anthony Wint is going to bulldoze through him, to be perfectly honest with you, take him down or just win on the feet. So, once again, I'm picking in Anthony Wint, and I'm picking him via knockout. Now, with all that said, that's been my breakdown of this matchup. If you enjoyed this video, like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below on who you think's going to win. Until then, I've been Bo from Brutal Commentary. I thank you all for listening. And remember, stay calm, stay respectful, and enjoy the violence. I'll see y'all next time.